Welcome to True Tears Stories. Please like this video and subscribe to True Tears Stories. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Daniel had never been the grand gesture type. He was quiet, thoughtful, better with planning than poetry. But this year, for Eliza's 45th birthday, he wanted to do something more than just dinner and flowers. Their daughter, Ava, was turning 16 in a few weeks. Things had felt distant in the house lately, fractured in small, invisible ways. So he thought maybe a video would bring warmth back into the room. He gathered old photos and clips, had Ava film a short message, even reached out to Eliza's sister, who lived in Portland, for a surprise recorded greeting. He spent 2 weekends editing everything together, simple but from the heart. His goal wasn't to impress. It was to remind her, we're still us. The party was small. Eliza didn't like fuss. Just close friends, a few neighbors, and family. A catered spread lined the kitchen island. Eliza wore navy blue, her favorite color, the same shade as the scarf she wore on their honeymoon, the one she used to drape over her shoulders in church. Daniel waited until the candles were blown out. The cake had been passed around. Laughter still hung in the air. Then he stood and tapped a spoon gently against his glass. "Before we dive into dessert," he said, voice careful, "I put something together I'd love to share." He turned toward the TV and hit play on the remote. The screen filled with soft piano music and a slideshow of Eliza's childhood photos. Guests chuckled at the big hair, the shoulder pads, the goofy smiles. Ava's message came on last. Sweet, slightly awkward, but sincere. Eliza smiled through most of it, dabbing her eyes when her sister appeared. But when the video ended and people began clapping, she turned toward Daniel and said, just loudly enough for only him to hear, "Too bad you're not even her real father." The smile never left her face. Daniel froze. He blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. "What?" he whispered, but she was already standing, raising her glass toward the room. "To Daniel, for making me cry in front of everyone. Thank you, sweetheart." There was polite laughter, applause. Daniel clapped too, stiffly. His heartbeat was loud in his ears. He didn't say anything else that night. He cleaned up after the guests left, washed dishes while Eliza went upstairs, humming a song he didn't recognize. Ava had gone to a friend's house after dessert. The quiet of the kitchen gave him space to replay her words. "Too bad you're not even her real father." Maybe it was a joke, a cruel one, but still, a joke. They'd been married for 17 years. Ava was 16. He remembered the night Eliza told him she was pregnant. The tears, the fear, the way she clung to him. They weren't married yet then, but he remembered thinking, this is it. This is my life now. This is my family. Was she trying to hurt him, or had she just let something slip? He went upstairs slowly, listened at the bedroom door. She was in bed, lights off, scrolling her phone. He slid in beside her without speaking. Her breathing was even, unbothered. She turned off the phone and rolled to face the window. Daniel lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Ava had his nose. At least, he thought she did. But then again, people said she looked like Eliza in almost every way. He didn't sleep much. The next morning, she kissed his cheek in the kitchen and asked if he could pick up more milk. He nodded. He said nothing. But his mind was already turning over something else entirely. A test. Just to be sure. Just to stop the spinning. He told himself it was about peace of mind, that it didn't mean he didn't love her. But beneath that was another voice, one the colder. What if she lied? Daniel waited until a Tuesday morning, the kind where nothing was urgent and the house felt safely empty. Ava was at school. Eliza had gone to her Pilates class. He watched her back out of the driveway, her taillights blinking in the morning sun. And only then did he walk upstairs with a purpose he couldn't name out loud. The test had arrived 2 days earlier in a plain box. He'd hidden it in the garage, behind the paint cans, just in case. It felt ridiculous at first. This quiet betrayal in return for something she may never have meant. But then again, what if she had? Daniel stood in Ava's room for a full minute before he sat at her desk. He pulled out the little test kit, opened the swabs with hands that trembled. She'd left her hairbrush there, easy, careless, full of DNA. He took a few strands and sealed them in the bag. He would send it off this afternoon. The results would take a week. Maybe less, maybe more. He didn't know what he was expecting, but he already knew what he feared. Back in the bedroom, he meant only to clean. That's what he told himself when he opened her nightstand drawer. Just clean. But inside was nothing but lotion, lip balm, a few old receipts. He moved to the dresser, the sock drawer, a place no one thinks twice about. That's when he saw it. An envelope, thick and slightly wrinkled, tucked under a pile of winter tights. It had been opened. He took it out slowly. The name on the document was Ava's. It was another test, a hospital paternity report dated almost 15 years earlier, long before Daniel ever thought to question anything. His throat went dry. The name listed under alleged father wasn't his. It was someone he didn't recognize, Colin Brentwood. Under probability of paternity, it read 99.98%. His hands shook. So she knew. She had known all along, and yet she'd let him raise Ava, love Ava, build a life around her. His knees buckled, and he sat down on the edge of the bed. Everything inside him was hollowing out. There were no memories of Colin Brentwood. He had never been mentioned, not even once. Eliza always said Ava was a miracle, unplanned, but deeply wanted. He could still remember Ava's first steps, the way she used to curl her little hand into his beard when he carried her. He'd taught her to ride a bike, stood outside in the rain during her first soccer game, held her when she got her first heartbreak. None of that had changed, but somehow, all of it felt cracked now. He put the envelope back exactly where he'd found it. In the mirror, his face looked pale. Eliza came home just after noon. Her gym bag hit the floor with the usual thud. She opened the fridge, poured a glass of juice, didn't even glance his way. "You okay?" she asked over her shoulder. Daniel nodded. "Just tired." He didn't mention the drawer, didn't mention the envelope. She walked past him without a second look, heading upstairs to shower. He sat in the kitchen, hands folded, heart pounding like he was holding a secret that would burn a hole straight through him. And the worst part was, he didn't know what to do next. Tell her he knew? Ask her to explain something she'd buried for 16 years? No, not yet. He needed the results of his own test. He needed that final, undeniable truth. Even if the envelope in the drawer already gave him the answer. The days crawled after that. Every time Eliza kissed his cheek, he flinched, just slightly. Every time Ava said, "Dad," he smiled. but part of him flinched inside. He was holding two realities in his hands now. One where he was her father, the only one she'd ever known, and another where that title had been built on someone else's blood. On the fourth night, he lay awake again, listening to Eliza breathe beside him. She looked peaceful, untouched by the fracture growing between them. Maybe she thought he'd never find out. Maybe she thought it didn't matter. Maybe it didn't. But the truth was sitting there now, between them, like a third body in the bed. When the email came the next morning, he didn't open it right away. He sat with it for a long time. Finally, he clicked, and there it was. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. He stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then he stood, slowly, and closed the laptop. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just whispered, "Okay," and started planning what to do next. The party was set for Saturday night. Eliza loved her birthday small, but not too small, just enough people to feel surrounded without the pressure of being the center of attention. She wanted fairy lights strung in the backyard, jazz in the background, little bowls of almonds and olives on the deck. Casual, curated, charming. Just like her. Daniel handled the details. He always did. That's what she liked about him. Dependable, predictable, steady. He picked up the cake, a lemon chiffon with raspberry filling, her favorite. He set out the lights, rented the space heater, even borrowed a portable speaker from Ava's school. From the outside, it looked like nothing had changed. Inside, his chest felt like a pane of glass held tight in a shaking hand. The test had sat on his nightstand for 2 days now. He hadn't shown Ava, not yet. She was still calling him Dad, still asking for lunch money, still tossing her shoes in the hallway like the world was the same. He couldn't destroy that, not without care. Eliza, meanwhile, seemed utterly unaware. Or maybe just unbothered. She'd asked if he could cue up the same video he'd played at her last party. Everyone loved it, she said. The one where Ava calls him the best dad ever. He'd said yes. That night, as guests began to arrive, Daniel stood by the cooler, opening drinks and handing out napkins. The neighbors smiled. Her co-workers brought flowers. Eliza was radiant, in a soft green dress he'd never seen before. She kissed his cheek. Her lipstick left a faint print he didn't wipe away. "How are you holding up?" she asked, with a wink. "You always get nervous around my birthday." He smiled. Careful. Something like that. By 9, the fire pit was glowing. Ava had gone inside to grab more sparklers. Eliza sipped her wine on the patio with 2 friends, laughing in that bright, unfiltered way he used to adore. And that's when Daniel saw it. Her phone, sitting on the table, screen lit, open to a message. He hadn't intended to read it, but he caught one line. He still doesn't know. I don't think he ever will. The name at the top was saved only as CB. His blood turned to ice. So Colin Brentwood wasn't just a name from a document. He was still here, still in her phone, still in her life. Daniel didn't react. He couldn't. He simply reached for the remote control in his pocket. The guests had started gathering around the screen on the back wall, just like last year. A few people held plates. Someone handed Eliza a second glass of wine. Daniel turned toward her and said, "There's a little surprise in the video this year." Eliza tilted her head. "Another message from my sister?" He didn't answer. He pressed play. The first half looked just like the original. Pictures of Eliza through the years, clips of Ava as a baby, that same soft piano music. Guests oohed and awed, smiling with nostalgia. Eliza leaned into him, her hand lightly brushing his. Then the video shifted. The music faded. The screen went black. Then white text appeared. "Sometimes the best gift is the truth." A pause. Then a scan of the DNA test results. Clearly labeled. Ava's name. Daniel's name. And the words in bold. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. The sound of the patio changed instantly. Gasps, a single nervous laugh, then silence so deep Daniel could hear the hum of the string lights. Eliza froze. Her hand dropped from his arm. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. The screen faded again, replaced by the paternity test he'd found in the drawer. Different name, different date, same result. He turned to her now. His voice was low, calm. "I know about Colin." Ava had stepped outside just as the second test flashed. Her eyes moved between the screen and her parents. "What's going on?" she asked. Her voice sounded far too young for this moment. Eliza took a step forward. "Daniel, turn it off. Now." But he didn't move. He looked at Ava. "I love you," he said. "That has never changed. But there's something you need to know, and I didn't want you to hear it in a whisper, or behind closed doors, or years too late." Ava looked at Eliza. "Mom?" Eliza's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes burned with fury, or shame. Maybe both. Daniel turned off the screen. The backyard was dead quiet. Eliza finally spoke. "You had no right." "You took that from me the moment you lied," Daniel said. "The moment you let me believe, year after year, that she was mine without telling me the truth." "She is yours," Eliza said. "You raised her. You love her. None of that changes." Daniel shook his head. "That's not your choice to make anymore." And then he walked inside. Not because he didn't love them both, but because love, when built on silence and deception, becomes something else entirely. Daniel sat in the dark of the hallway, just beyond the kitchen. The buzz of distant voices from the backyard now softened by walls and walls of silence. He hadn't meant for it to go that way. Not really. He'd told himself the video was about honesty, about forcing something long buried into the open. But now that it had happened, it felt like he'd cracked open something far larger than betrayal. It felt like grief. Not for Eliza, not only for her, but for a version of himself. One who believed that love alone was enough to make something true, that raising a child, showing up every day, somehow cemented that bond into fact. He heard footsteps approach, slower than usual. Careful. Ava stepped into the kitchen doorway. Her hair was pulled back into a low ponytail, her arms crossed, defensive, confused, but not angry. Not yet. "Was that real?" she asked. Daniel looked up. "Yes." "Why? Why would you do it like that?" He hesitated. "Because I wasn't sure I could survive hearing it again in private." She nodded slowly, then sat across from him on the floor, back against the opposite wall. "So you're not my real dad." It wasn't a question. Not really. But he answered anyway. Biologically, no. But I held your hand the first time you got stitches. I sat on the bathroom floor when you had your first fever. I watched you sleep every night, for years, just to make sure you were still breathing. Ava's eyes glistened. I know. Daniel swallowed. This doesn't change how I feel about you. I need you to believe that. I'm not proud of how I told you, but I didn't want you to grow up under a lie. A long pause passed between them. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of someone leaving the party early, murmured apologies fading down the driveway. She lied to both of us, Ava said quietly. Daniel nodded. She did. Who's the other guy? The one from the paper? Daniel's voice cracked. His name's Colin. That's all I know. She never told me about him. I don't even know if he knows about you. Ava sat with that, absorbed it without reacting. Then, I don't want to know him. You don't have to. I don't want this to change who I am. It doesn't, Daniel said. It just changes how we move forward. Eliza stood at the far end of the hall now. Her makeup had smudged, and her arms were wrapped tightly around her torso, like she was holding herself together by force. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said. It was a mistake. A stupid, one-time mistake. And when I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't sure. But you were steady, Daniel. You were good. I chose to build a life with you. By lying, he said, without looking at her. Yes. Her voice cracked. Because I thought it would protect what we had. I thought it would be enough. It was never yours to decide. Ava stood, slowly. You could have told me, she said to Eliza, even last year, or 5 years ago, or before tonight. I was afraid, Eliza whispered, afraid it would ruin everything. Ava didn't reply. She just walked past her mother slowly and disappeared upstairs. The silence after that was crushing. Eliza stepped into the kitchen and sat at the table. I know I deserve your anger, she said, but I also know you love her, and that love doesn't disappear just because the facts did. Daniel finally looked at her. There was no anger in his eyes now, only sadness, layered and old. She's my daughter in every way that matters, he said. But you made that harder, not easier. You poisoned something that could have been strong enough to survive the truth. I didn't know how, she whispered, to tell you, to undo what I'd built. You never tried. Eliza's lip trembled. What do you want me to say? Daniel stood, I don't want you to say anything. He walked toward the hallway again, toward the staircase. Daniel, she called after him. He stopped. I never stopped loving you. He turned halfway, just enough to look at her. I believe you, he said, but love without truth is just a performance, and I'm tired of playing a part. Then he climbed the stairs and shut the door to the guest room behind him. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He simply sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed and breathed. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, whether Ava would forgive him for the way the truth came out, whether Eliza would fight to keep the marriage alive, whether this whole thing would unravel everything or somehow rebuild it differently. But one thing was finally still inside him. The wondering was over. And in the strange calm that followed the storm, Daniel realized something he hadn't known until now. Sometimes the only way to reclaim your life is to let the lie burn. The next morning, the house was impossibly quiet. No birthday cleanup, no footsteps on the stairs, no hum of Eliza making coffee. Daniel lay in the guest room and stared at the ceiling. The light through the blinds cast soft, crooked shadows on the wall, shifting slowly, peacefully. He hadn't slept much, but when he did, it was the kind of sleep that comes after a long-awaited exhale. Down the hall, he heard the distant sound of Ava's door opening. A quiet creak, a pause, then the soft tread of her feet moving toward the stairs. She didn't knock. He didn't expect her to. But somehow, knowing she was still there, still walking, was enough. He sat up slowly. On the nightstand was the test kit he hadn't thrown away. The empty envelope still folded beneath it. He looked at them for a long time, then opened the drawer and placed them inside. He didn't need to see them anymore. He stepped into the hallway. No Eliza. Just a plate of toast left on the kitchen table. She'd gone somewhere. Or maybe she'd just needed space too. In the backyard, the lights were still up, swaying faintly in the morning breeze. Daniel stepped outside, feeling the dew through his socks, and looked around. The chairs from last night were still scattered. Someone had left a napkin under the hedge. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It was open, like the blank page of a journal, unfinished, unruined. He didn't know what would come next. If the marriage could be rebuilt, if trust could grow again. But he knew this. He had told the truth, and it hadn't broken him. In fact, it had started to set him free.